When I found my husband's secret divorce papers hidden in his desk with my signature already forged, I didn't scream or cry. I smiled, poured him coffee, and started my own plan. You won't believe what happened in court. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let me know where you're listening from in the comments. I'm Tara, 32 years old, communications consultant, living in a quiet part of Seattle. To everyone who knew us, my husband Mark and I were the dream couple. The kind of people who hosted game nights, always smiling in photos, and never raised our voices in public. I used to believe that too until the night I realized I was living in a beautifully decorated lie. Mark and I met 6 years ago at a networking event. He was confident, witty, the kind of man who made you feel seen. I fell fast. We built a home, shared dreams, and built matching careers, he as an architect, me as a communications strategist. For a long time I thought we were equals. But slowly, things changed. It started with little things: his phone always face down, working late nights that didn't add up, brushing off my questions with that tired smile and a kiss on the forehead. Then came the comments. "You're lucky I'm patient," he'd say when I disagreed. "You're too emotional to understand how business works." Or my favorite, "Tara, stop over-analyzing everything. You always imagine problems." Gaslighting disguised as care. I didn't see it at first. I kept convincing myself he was stressed, that maybe I was overreacting. That's what love does to you, it teaches you to excuse the very behavior that's breaking you. But something in me started shifting the night I saw a bank alert pop up on his iPad. A transfer I didn't recognize, $10,000 from our joint account to a private one I didn't even know existed. When I asked him about it, he brushed it off with a chuckle. "Relax, babe. Just moving funds around for tax stuff." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But my gut wouldn't let me. A few weeks later, I was tidying his office when I noticed a folder tucked behind his printer, labeled Legal Affairs. My first instinct was to leave it alone. I didn't want to be that wife. But curiosity, or maybe self-preservation, got the better of me. Inside were papers. Divorce papers. Neatly printed, dated, and signed. Only my signature wasn't mine. At first, I thought I was misreading. Then I saw the attached asset list: our house, his company shares, our car, all marked for transfer. To him, every single asset. My chest went cold. He'd been planning this. While smiling across from me at dinner, while kissing me goodbye every morning, he'd been quietly preparing to erase me from my own life. And the forged signature? That was his silent way of telling me he didn't think I'd ever find out. That night, I sat in the dark living room with a glass of wine, staring at those papers for hours. I wanted to storm into the bedroom and demand an explanation. But something stopped me. For the first time in years, I decided not to react. Not to cry, not to beg, not to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. Instead, I made a quiet decision: if Mark wanted to play this game, I'd learn the rules and beat him at his own. The next morning, he came downstairs like nothing was wrong, humming while making coffee. "Morning, babe," he said, sliding a mug toward me. "You look tired." I smiled back. "Didn't sleep much," I said softly, taking a sip. My hands were steady. "Just thinking about our future." He smiled, completely unaware that I'd just read his. Over the next few weeks, I watched him closer. He'd make mysterious calls, always stepping out to the patio to talk. He started locking his laptop. He became extra affectionate in public, but cold and distant at home. It was almost funny. His guilt made him act like the perfect husband. I kept up the performance too. I laughed at his jokes, cooked his favorite meals, even surprised him with small gifts. If he noticed how calm I was, he never said a word. But I was collecting details: every late-night call, every suspicious transfer, every little inconsistency. I started a journal and stored photos of all the documents I found in a hidden folder on my phone. Then came the night he slipped. I overheard him on the phone, talking to someone he called Leah. He said, "Once this is finalized, I'll be free. She won't know what hit her." That was all I needed to hear. It wasn't just betrayal, it was strategy. He was plotting to blindside me legally, emotionally, and financially. And for the first time since I found those papers, I laughed. Not out of bitterness, but clarity. I finally saw him for who he was: a coward who mistook my love for weakness. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, one of my clients, a woman who specialized in asset recovery and fraud cases. When I told her everything, she didn't even blink. "Good," she said. "Let him finish his performance. And while he's acting, we'll build your case." So that's what I did. For every lie he told, I quietly collected a truth. For every dollar he moved, I made sure there was proof. A month later, I had everything: emails, financial records, even photos of him with Leah. And through it all, I never once let him see me angry. I kissed him goodnight. I smiled when he left for work. I even told him I couldn't wait for our anniversary. But in my heart, I'd already made peace with one thing: this wasn't the end of my marriage. It was the beginning of my revenge. Because Mark thought I'd never find out. He thought I'd never stand up for myself. He thought he could erase me from the story we built together. But what he didn't know was that I'd already started rewriting the ending, this time, with me holding the pen. And by the time I was done, he wouldn't just lose me. He'd lose everything he tried to steal. I didn't rush my revenge. That's something I learned fast. People like Mark expect explosions, confrontations, drama. They expect you to lose control so they can play the victim. But silence? That's what truly scares them. The morning after I met with my lawyer, I sat across from Mark at breakfast like nothing had changed. He was scrolling through his phone, smirking at whatever secret messages he thought I didn't notice. I stirred my coffee and smiled. "Don't forget your client dinner tonight," I reminded him sweetly. He nodded, barely looking up. "Yeah, it might run late. Don't wait up." "I won't." I didn't need to. Because I already knew exactly where he was going. He wasn't meeting clients, he was meeting her. Her name was Leah, a co-worker at his firm. Single, younger, the kind of woman who probably thought being the other woman was romantic. I'd seen her once before at his office Christmas party. She'd been overly polite, almost nervous when I introduced myself. I remember thinking she looked like someone trying too hard to hide something. Now I knew what. That evening, I tailed him. Quietly. He didn't even notice the black sedan parked 2 cars away from his. He walked into a dimly lit restaurant, right on cue. 10 minutes later, Leah arrived, hair curled, perfume probably strong enough to be smelled across the table. They didn't even bother to hide it. It's funny how betrayal looks so ordinary from the outside, just 2 people sharing dinner. But I watched the way he touched her hand, the way she laughed softly when he said something. And I thought to myself, you really think you're winning, don't you, Mark? I didn't take pictures that night. Not yet. I didn't need to prove anything yet. For now, I just wanted to see how deep the lie went. The next morning, while he was showering, I accessed his laptop. The password was the same, our anniversary date. The irony almost made me laugh. Inside, I found everything: emails, hotel reservations, transfers to a private account, and even plans to move forward once everything is finalized. Everything he'd hidden, he'd neatly documented. I forwarded every file to my lawyer, then created encrypted backups. Every detail, every proof, was now safe. Over the next few weeks, I played the part of the oblivious wife. Mark got bolder, more careless. He'd step outside to take work calls, whispering into the phone, always ending with "love you." Once, he even asked me to help him pick out a tie for a conference. I smiled and said, "You'll look great in the blue one." He wore it to dinner with Leah that night. Meanwhile, my lawyer was quietly preparing the real divorce petition with my name at the top. We'd gathered enough to prove not only infidelity, but fraud, forgery, and financial concealment. Every time Mark thought he was moving closer to freedom, I was already 3 steps ahead. But the sweetest part came when I froze the joint account. He called me at work the next day, panicked. "Tara, did you move the funds?" I kept my tone calm. "What funds? The account, it's empty." "What the hell did you do?" "Oh," I said, pretending to think. "Didn't the accountant mention they were being reviewed for inconsistencies? Something about missing documentation?" He went silent. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, trying to calculate what I knew. The truth was, I knew everything. That weekend, he tried to be affectionate again, cooked dinner, played my favorite music, even bought flowers. The performance was impressive, I'll give him that. At dinner he said, "We should take a trip soon. Somewhere warm. Get away from all the stress." I smiled, swirling the wine in my glass. "That sounds nice, Mark. I'll check our accounts first thing Monday." His jaw tightened, just slightly. That was when I knew he was nervous. Later that night, when he fell asleep, I looked at him in the dim light and felt nothing. No sadness, no nostalgia, no love. Just clarity. He wasn't my husband anymore, he was a project. And I was about to complete it. A week later, I took a quiet day off work and went downtown to file my divorce petition. My lawyer smiled as she handed me the final copy. "You're officially ahead of him," she said. "He can't file first now. You've already named him the respondent. And once he tries, the forgery becomes evidence. I exhaled, feeling something between relief and power. That night, I made Mark's favorite dinner again. He came home late, pretending to be tired, complaining about the office. He didn't notice how I watched him when he spoke. Rough day? I asked. He sighed. You have no idea. So much on my plate. Ma'am, I murmured. You always handle things so well. I trust you completely. He smiled, pleased. I know you do. Yes, he believed me. And that was my advantage. A few days later, he brought up taking a break. The fake concern in his eyes almost made me laugh. I just think we need space, Tara. You've been different lately. I understand, I said softly. If that's what you need. His relief was instant. I knew you'd be mature about this. Oh, I was. More than he'd ever know. The next morning, while he was at work, I met with our accountant and formally separated my finances. Every account, every card, every document cleanly divided, legally protected. That night, I told him dinner was ready and he could check the mail. There was a thick envelope on the table when he came back. He didn't think much of it until he saw the return address. Superior Court of Washington. His face went pale. He looked at me slowly. What is this? I smiled faintly. You might want to read it. He tore it open, I scanning the papers. Then he froze. Filed by Tara Jensen. Respondent Mark Jensen. Grounds fraud, forgery, concealment of assets. I took a sip of wine, watching the color drain from his face. Tara, he stammered, what is this? Just a little head start, I said quietly. Didn't you say timing is everything? He dropped the papers onto the table, speechless. I smiled politely. Dinner's getting cold. That night, he slept in the guest room. I didn't hear from him in the morning. But my lawyer texted at 10 a.m. He just called. He's furious. I texted back, good. Let him be. Because for the first time since this nightmare began, I was in control. And he didn't even realize his worst day hadn't started yet. The real shock was coming soon. The court date. The truth. The day I'd stop pretending and let him finally see the woman he underestimated. The day of the court hearing felt like calm before a storm. Seattle was gray, quiet, and strangely fitting. I stood in front of the mirror, buttoning my cream blazer, and for the first time in months, I actually recognized the woman staring back at me. No fear, no confusion, just quiet strength. Mark always said I was too emotional for the real world, that I needed him to keep me grounded. Today, I'd show him just how grounded I could be. I arrived early, my lawyer Julia already waiting with a calm smile. You ready? She asked. I've never been readier, I said. When Mark walked in 20 minutes later, he looked nothing like the confident man I'd married. His face was tight, jaw locked, suit slightly wrinkled. Leah was with him, nervous, pale, clutching a handbag like it could save her. He didn't look at me at first. When he finally did, it was brief, defiant. I smiled politely. That only made him angrier. We sat opposite each other in silence until the judge entered. The clerk read out the case number. My name first, his second. You could see the confusion flash in his eyes like he still couldn't believe I'd beaten him to it. The hearing began. Julia stood. Your Honor, my client filed for divorce after discovering multiple instances of fraud and financial concealment committed by the respondent. We've submitted documentation of asset transfers, bank manipulation, and forgery. Mark's lawyer jumped up immediately. Objection, Your Honor. Those claims are unsubstantiated. Julia smiled faintly. We have proof. She handed the judge a neatly organized folder, the same one I'd been building piece by piece for months. Inside were screenshots, signed documents, timestamps, and transaction histories that traced every dollar Mark tried to hide. When the judge asked about the forged signature, Julia pulled out a side-by-side comparison. Notice the differences in pen pressure, the slant of the letters, and the missing loop on the capital T, she explained. My client's actual signature is on her passport and employment records. This was forged. Mark shifted in his seat, his lawyer whispering frantically beside him. Tara, the judge asked, did you confront your husband upon discovering these documents? No, Your Honor, I said calmly. I wanted to make sure I had proof before saying anything. A faint murmur rippled through the courtroom. Even the judge looked mildly impressed. Then Julia added, we also have evidence that the respondent was having an extramarital affair with an employee at his firm, a Ms. Leah Grayson, who benefited financially from some of these hidden transfers. Leah's face went white. What? She stammered, looking at Mark. You said no one would. Mark hissed under his breath, shut up. But it was too late. Julia held up the exhibit emails between them discussing the property sale and how they'd start fresh once the divorce was finalized. Mark's lawyer tried to object again, but the damage was done. The judge's tone changed sharper, colder. "Mr. Jensen," she said, "do you deny these transfers and this communication?" Mark tried to straighten up. "Your Honor, these are private conversations taken out of context." "Context?" Julia cut in smoothly. "You transferred joint assets without consent and submitted falsified legal documents." The judge slammed her pen on the table. "Enough." Silence. Then she looked at me. "Mrs. Jensen, based on the evidence, I'm issuing an immediate freeze on all joint assets. You'll retain full rights to the marital home and receive restitution for the fraudulent transfers. Additionally, your petition for divorce is granted, effective immediately." The words hit like music. I kept my expression calm, but inside, I felt the weight lift. The quiet, liberating peace of justice served. Mark turned to me, furious. "You planned this," he spat. I tilted my head slightly. "You started it." Leah stood abruptly, her voice shaking. "You told me everything was handled. You said she'd never find out." Mark ignored her. He looked at the judge. "She's lying, she's twisting everything." The judge's tone was final. "Mr. Jensen, I suggest you stop talking before I hold you in contempt." The gavel came down. Case closed. When the session ended, Mark followed me out into the hallway. "Tara, please listen. We can fix this," he said, desperation cracking his voice. "You don't have to do this. You're overreacting." I turned slowly, meeting his eyes. For a moment I remembered all the years I'd given him, the trust, the loyalty, the love. Then I remembered the forged signature. "I'm not overreacting, Mark," I said softly. "I'm just responding quietly." He tried to grab my hand, but I stepped back. "Don't," I said simply. He stood there, speechless, as Leah stormed past him, tears in her eyes. Julia caught up to me, handing me the final paperwork. "Congratulations," she said with a smile. "You handled that perfectly." "Thank you," I said, looking down at the papers that now carried my freedom. As I walked out of the courthouse, I saw Mark through the glass doors, still arguing with Leah. I could hear fragments, accusations, excuses, panic. But it didn't matter anymore. That version of my life was over. I stepped out into the crisp afternoon air, the clouds parting just enough for sunlight to touch my face. For the first time in a long while, I breathed without tension. Later that evening, as I sat in my new apartment overlooking the city, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my journal, the same one where I'd documented everything. On the last page, I wrote, "He said I'd never survive without him. Now I own everything he tried to steal." I smiled to myself, closed the book, and exhaled. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It's not chaos or confrontation. It's walking away from the fire while the people who lit it are still choking on the smoke. That night, Julia called to tell me something else. The audit on Mark's company had started. Apparently, my case had triggered a financial review. The firm had suspended him pending investigation. I thanked her and ended the call. Then I looked out the window at the glittering skyline. My city, my peace, my fresh start. You know what they say, karma doesn't miss. But sometimes, you just have to give it directions. And I did.